With that said, rise and shout. Let's get to what's trending.
Steady blazing.
West Virginia touchdown.
Right into the Crimson. Baylor with a touchdown.
You know I'm steady blazing.
What's trending? Brought to you by Feastbox, donating 10% of every purchase to Full of Hope, charitable organization feeding hungry families. Jarom, we spent a lot of great time in Dallas at Big 12 Media Days. In fact, it exceeded our expectations.
I thought you were going to say eating Feastbox, which is also the case.
We also recently did that, and it was great. It was great. At Media Days, for a moment, my perceptions changed just a little bit based on conversations I had with BYU opponents. So my question for you today is, and I'll finish my thought in a moment, did talking to all the coaches and players and being around the Big 12 media alter your expectations for what BYU can do or will do in 2023?
I certainly felt like BYU belonged, not only BYUtv, but BYU, right, in that space. But ultimately, no. Because, again, two unknowns going into the season. One, how are the 21 portal transfers going to fit in? How are they going to elevate BYU? How are they going to assimilate into what BYU's been doing, which has been pretty successful the last 3 seasons with 29 wins? And then the other is, how hard is being in a Power 5 conference? What's it going to look like over 10 games? I don't know the answer to that. So, unlike last year, I'm keeping expectations low, which is, hey, make a bowl game and let's build from there. BYU could certainly be better than that. BYU could be worse than that. Hopefully, BYU at least makes a bowl game. So, while those conversations were interesting and fun and informative and enlightening, it didn't really change how I feel about BYU, which is I'm not exactly sure on those two things I mentioned.
When we finished our conversation with Neil Brown, who was the head coach of West Virginia, and he brought up and was not happy at all, understandably, about the Mountaineers being picked to finish last in the conference, and then he listed off every reason why they should be better than 14th. For a moment, I thought, holy cow, this conference is a bear. There really are no gimmies. And BYU's got to go to West Virginia in early November and make that cross-country trip. Yeah. I have, in my mind, been thinking it's a very winnable game for BYU. But then I was like, is it? Because based on history, BYU has not performed well in that scenario when you have to travel 2 time zones, especially if it's an early kickoff. So if Fox or ESPN Plus labels that as like a noon kickoff or a 1:30 kickoff.
Well, it's probably going to be early because I'm guessing it'll be on ESPN Plus. That's not one of the more enticing matchups in the Big 12 this year.
That typically does not bode well for BYU. So again, I thought maybe that's not a really good chance for BYU to win. I don't know. And so then I started looking at the schedule again, and I was like, man, is 6 wins going to be tough? Is it going to be difficult to get to 6 wins for BYU? So I had this probably 10 to 15-minute period following the interview where I was like, oh my gosh, it's just going to be very, very difficult. But then I started thinking, okay, Keaton Slovis, Aiden Robbins, offensive line's really good, tight end group's solid, Isaac Rex is healthy, the wide receiver core is pretty deep.
Upgraded overall.
It's deep.
You lose the superstar in Puka.
Kept Cody Epps.
Yep.
Jay Hill is the defensive coordinator. New energy, new staff on that side of the ball.
Couldn't be worse, probably, right?
And then I was like,
at least that.
No. I stand by what I said.
Yeah.
Like the talent and BYU's run through independence, having played so many high-level opponents, not 10 consecutively in the Power 5 ranks, but they have ramped up. It's made them as ready as they could be as an independent, coming from a G5 before that.
They're the most ready Power 5 included team ever. Because the other teams may have been ready, but they never had the schedules like this, is what I mean.
Yes. So BYU, they will win 6 games. I still stick with 7. But after that interview specifically, there was a little bit of a freak-out moment where I thought, holy cow, this conference is so tough.
You want to go back to Indy?
So closely contested. No, I do not. Please, no.
Oh, the Mountain West?
The margin of error is so razor thin, and it goes back to what we were discussing earlier this week with Brett McMurphy when he said to me, I feel like there are 7 teams in this conference that could swing from 5 to 7 wins. Like, they're all so close together. And he has BYU as one of those teams in that group. And that's fair, especially coming from his, national perspective. But I lean 7 to BYU. I'm sticking with it. I had a fleeting moment of doubt. How dare I?
It's a normal human experience. If you don't, I'd question whether you're a robot.
But I'm back to 7. 6 at worst. 6 at worst for this team with this much talent, assuming things have not gone just terribly wrong with injuries.
And maybe in certain spaces, BYU is better than they were before. Like, it's just hard to imagine that Keaton Slovis could be better than Jaron Hall. You know what I mean? Jaron was really good.
Yes.
But what if he is? It's hard to imagine that Kingsley Suamataia will be an upgrade at left tackle from 4th-round pick Blake Freeland. But what if he is? Because he's getting first-round buzz. That means he could be better, right? There's people who think he'll be better.
Yeah.
Is there a receiver that will put up more production and be better than Puka Nacua? If Chase Roberts is healthy all year and Cody Epps, they could have more yards, catches, and touchdowns than Puka, but can they make that play against Boise State? Can they have that game against Boise State, 14 for 150 or whatever? Like, is there that guy? I'm not sure, but like Cody Epps needed last year, he needed an opportunity. Right now, we don't know several elements that are going to happen in the season that we cannot see. A.J. Vongpacha was unbelievable this year. Like, all kinds of things. Wow, L.J. Martin as a freshman came in and rushed for 600 yards. Like, we don't know those answers quite yet. But Jackson Craven's on the defensive line. Wow, he was the next Kairos Tonga and had 3.5 sacks and was a real block eater there because Isaiah Banya and Tyler Batty combined for 12.5 sacks. Like, we don't know those answers, but I'm excited to see it because I think the overall talent has upgraded. Just specifically, it's hard to be like, this guy better than this guy better than this guy, therefore BYU will be better. And the schedule's tougher. How many reps does BYU get up on the bar that now has more weight on it? We'll see. We'll see this season, which we're stoked about. Listen, there's going to be a tough year here and there where BYU's good, but there are injuries, or guess what? The league's just really stinking good. Sometimes it's not all about you.
Yeah.
It's about you in that environment, and maybe you're not good enough, and you got to elevate in some way. This is this is one of the least talented teams BYU will ever field in the Big 12. What I mean by that is BYU is going to get increasingly better. They will recruit at a higher level. Therefore, we'll look back and go, oh, we thought that was like a good squad walking into the season. Now BYU is getting more 4 stars on the reg, more 3 stars. They're not relying on hopefully Tyler Algier goes from linebacker walk-on to superstar running back. While you still could have those, you're bringing in proven guys that get to the next level as well.
We all hope BYU is like Oklahoma State, who is just always solid, good, never miss a bowl game, always wins 6 games. I mean, it's been 20-plus years since Oklahoma State was out of the bowl.
Mike Gundy's never had a losing record.
He's never had a losing record.
Sorry, never not made a bowl game. But yeah.
That's incredible.
Yes. And then you want a few years where you're contending. And BYU will get to that.
Yeah, we all hope that BYU never has to have another losing season ever again.
Yes. And, it's been few and far between the last 4 seasons?
4, yeah. And 3 were consecutively and got a head coach fired here between 2002
2 on my
and
mission.
2004.
Like, I felt like that was a blessing for me personally that I missed those, but that's another subject.
Yeah, but before that, I mean, Lavelle didn't have a losing season at BYU from 1973 until
72. Yeah.
72. He didn't do it. He didn't have a losing season after his second season at BYU.
They were 4-6.
That was it.
Last year.
That was it.
We
all hope for that.
Yeah.
We all hope for that.
Yeah. Okay, topic 2. Fox football analyst Brock Heward said the following about which Big 12 newcomer will win a Big 12 title first. Quote, I think BYU will. I think with the demographics they recruit, the culture, the pieces, instability, I think they're far ahead of Cincinnati. Now, Gus Malzahn in Orlando has a lot of speed, a lot of talent, but I'd probably put BYU right there with UCF as far as on the road to that level. Can you improve your reach? Does it open more doors for recruiting? I do think this move to the Big 12 does that. Do you feel the same way?
I think this is optimistic. I mean, if I'm being fully just transparent here.
Which we are mostly.
I was a little surprised to hear Brock Heward say this because I thought people would lean heavily toward UCF.
Because Florida talent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the Florida pipeline with Gus Malzahn, like that's enough for me. If I was outside of the BYU bubble and you're like, okay, you got to pick one of these 4 teams that's going to win the Big 12 first, you tell me Gus Malzahn and Florida talent, it's like UCF. And they're the best of the 4 teams coming into the conference right now.
They're ready to
They've got
compete-ish.
all of those things kind of going in that direction
Mm-hmm.
in their favor right now. So that would probably be my default answer. But I like the idea of BYU being the first
Hey, of course we do.
newcomer to
Yeah.
win a Big 12 championship. I just wonder what kind of a timeline Brock Heward is thinking of.
I'd love to know if he thinks in the next 5 years.
That would be my
one of the
follow-up
4
question.
Win
Yeah, okay.
the
It's
league.
like, all right, you think BYU is going to be the first to win a Big 12 title. What kind of a timeline are you giving BYU to achieve that? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it longer than that?
Let's hope it's not.
Like, Texas and Oklahoma leave, so that changes things, obviously. But I think you've said before, like, hey, it took Utah 10 years. I'm going to give BYU 10 years.
Yeah, let's hope it goes earlier. I think BYU.
Could they do it in 5? Could they do it in
Yeah.
5 with Texas and Oklahoma gone?
I think so. I do. I would agree that my first pick would probably be UCF because talent. I think BYU culturally and the sort of trajectory of the program right now is really high. We're in a real nice spot coming off of 10, 11, and 8 wins.
Yes.
And there's some real momentum. Like
Yes.
BYU's recruiting way better. Think about it. Would BYU have gotten Keaton Slovis and Aiden Robbins even 5 years ago?
Gosh.
No,
No,
I
no way.
don't think so. I think
way.
the Big
No
12
way.
obviously helps, but also Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall have really put BYU back in the quarterback game. BYU's in the left tackle game. Like, when does BYU get someone starting left tackle from a Power 5 team? Caleb Etienne is that guy. Like, and he won't even be the starting left tackle here because BYU has a first-round kind of guy who also is a transfer from Oregon. Like the Pukas, the Kingsleys, the Keatons, the Aidens. This is the new era of BYU football. In regards to 10 years, I'm hoping BYU by year 5, we're like, okay, we got a squad that can win it. Like we're walking in this year, we are not talking about the Big 12 title whatsoever. That is not a thing we are expecting with this group right away.
Okay.
But in the next, I think Dave and I talked about it a month or two ago. We'd like to BYU to be competitive.
Yeah.
Meaning
yes.
like top 5, top 6, I think, in the next 3 to 5. Because I think with BYU's brand, BYU's reach, BYU's better recruiting, the really good coaching staff that BYU has, that BYU can do that.
Okay.
And Utah got interesting early-ish, 2 of the first 3 years. They had 5 and 7 records, but they were challenging for the South title there. And frankly, I wish there were divisions for BYU because then you'd have a shot there. Like Wisconsin having good seasons in the Big Ten but winning their division, they would not have been in the Big Ten title game if there were no divisions because it would have been Ohio State and Michigan dueling it out again. But the Big 12 with no divisions after the NCAA rule change sort of changes things where, okay, you have to be like a 2-loss team in the regular season to even have a shot there. And if you have a 3-loss, maybe it's one of those parity years, which could be the case in the Big 12. I'm just excited. I am excited about the unknown. Typically,
Yes.
the unknown sometimes
Yes.
is a place of sort of fear or the unknown is
I experienced that after the interview with Neil Brown.
You felt that sort of like looking out into space and be like, how big is this place?
Oh, my gosh.
But it's exciting to be in the Big 12 and figure out those answers not only for BYU but the league. And now we lived on 25
yes.
acres by ourselves. Now we're in a middle-class suburbia neighborhood where we're like, let's get to know the neighbors. And right now it's very cordial.
Hey, BYU moved into a rich neighborhood. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yes, it did.
It's okay.
We lived in the neighborhood I don't live in Mapleton.
It's gonna take a little while, but it's okay. And what just like the eureka moment that I had when you were just talking about, competing for a Big 12 title is.
Did you say it out loud?
Oh, I said it mentally. Okay. If BYU legitimately is competing for a Big 12 title, Jarom, they're in the college football playoff conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very exciting.
You need to go 10-2 in the
That's
regular season.
very exciting.
Yeah.
But to compete for a Big 12 title, you probably have to do that,
You might, yeah, at least.
right? You probably have
You
to go
got to
10-2.
have the greatest year in BYU football history. Oh, isn't 84 that?
Oh,
that
man.
team's losing 2 or 3 games if they're in this Big 12. Like, it's not, you don't have those games that you were playing that year. That was
right.
that was a soft schedule.